Hello, everyone. We are continuing a fun series, and this is going to be Magnus Carlsen's response to the Scotch Opening, and we are gonna fly through this. We have some games to look at, but basically, we are looking at how different players respond to some of the most popular openings. All right, so if you might be having trouble dealing with an opening, why not pick a hero, as they say, and follow the person's repertoire? So I just did a video, Vladimir Kramnik's response to the Scotch. And now here is world champion Magnus Carlsen's response. And again, it doesn't matter if we look at the wins, losses, and the draws. And just so you can get a feel and flavor um, for what they are playing. So here's a video. Again, Magnus Carlsen has the black pieces. That's why I have the board flipped. And in this game, it's a player named Pavisovic. This is from 2004. Pavisovic with the white pieces was 26-15. This is from Vikings. And Magnus Carlsen was a mere 24-84 at the time. And against the Scotch, he played this main line. And again, Bishop A6 is a common continuation also here, exploiting the pin. But knight b6 is normal also. c3, queen e6. This allows bishop to come out. And it also prepares the move d5. So queen e4, d5, e takes. Alright, so d5, en passant, c takes, bishop d3, queen takes e4. So we have this instant endgame. White is slightly better due to the pawn structure here. He holds a slight lead in development, but it's not that big of a deal. Here's the fight for the diagonal. Both sides castle on the queen side. And this is the kind of endgame Scotch players like, or kind of game that they steer for. Ending where they have a nice pawn structure and they have weak targets in the black camp. All right, black has 3 pawn islands, but the A pawn, that pawn on A7, is difficult to get at. So white's focus here is that D pawn. All right, and so it's imperative for white to keep control over the D5 square so that the pawn cannot advance. Okay, so bishop F3 is played, and Magnus plays C5 here, which to me is a positional error because we just talked about the D5 square. So for good or bad, right, for good or ill, Magnus here should have played the move D5, where the continuation could have went like this. And matter of fact, we'll go like that. And white will be piling up on that isolated pawn and probably win it. This is a favorable ending for white. Not only does he have the isolated pawn as a target, but he also has this 2-1 queenside majority. All right, so we can understand why the young Magnus would avoid such a continuation. He plays c5 here, which is tantamount to positional suicide here. But Pavisovic plays the move knight b5. He's focused on this pawn right here, and he misses the best continuation. After bishop takes b7 check, king takes b7, rook he1, rook he8, takes. It's simply winning the pawn with rook d6 is preferable. If he tries to say, block the instead of trading on e8, just block the seventh rank with a move like e5 and knight b5. It's possible. Bishop takes, king takes, and then knight c8 again, trying to guard the seventh rank and protect his pawn simultaneously. And white holds all the keys here and is playing for two results, namely a win or a draw. But it can, easily put black under a lot of pressure here. Pavisovic goes for knight b5. After bishop takes, king takes, bishop takes f3. This gives black a little compensation and weakness to target himself. He gets his d5 push in, c takes, and knight takes. Okay, rook d2. His plan is to double up the d file, which he does. And after a takes b5, better is probably rook e8. But after a takes b5, rook takes d5, rook takes, Magnus goes into a bad ending. As we can see, those pawns on the fifth rank are, just open game. So king c7, check, king b6, rook e5, and Pavisovic went on to win this game quite easily. And I'll just go through the remaining moves too fast. His rook was way too active. Magnus, tries to hold on, but he's just dropping too many pawns. And this is what happens when the Scotch goes wrong for black. There's too many weaknesses to keep track of. And, those pawns just start dropping. Okay, so the debut, Magnus against the Scotch, did not go so well, and he resigned on move 59 here. Let's fast forward. So here's Magnus, much stronger now, a few years later in 2007, and he's playing a player named Lie. I think it's pronounced Kayel Lai or Lee, but he was rated 25-36, and Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces 27-10. This is from the Arctic Chess Challenge, round 8, 2007. So here we see something that you hardly ever see at top levels at GM levels, and that's the Scotch Gambit. Okay, so normally you see this knight takes d4 here, bishop c4. This denotes the Scotch Gambit. There's different continuations here. Magnus played knight f6, which is the most principled, and usually you get e5. And then you can get these there's semi-sharp variations where in white plays bishop b5, and then you get knight e4, knight d4, and you can have bishop c5. There's some theory here, bishop d7, because you can actually give up a pawn here. Magnus avoids all of that. Another continuation too, if white doesn't want to move, but it's known to be inferior for white, is e takes f4, even though it looks scary. Excuse me, e takes f6. So let's say castle, queen takes f6, queen e2, bishop e7, bishop g5, queen e6. So if it looks scary because the black king is like in the middle, but black, there's a lot of games in this line, but just old games, because in games below master level, because it's not really acceptable continuation for white. Maybe in blitz you could try that. But so after e5, Magnus plays another continuation, which is to me like one of the simplest continuations and avoiding a lot of unnecessary complications. And one of the reasons, again, why you don't see this opening, this Scotch Gambit at top levels. This is knight g4. So now you're threatening to win the pawn. Queen e2, right? Okay, you're gonna hold the pawn. Queen e7. You just build up on the pawn. Bishop f4, and then f6. d6 is also playable. And white is just able to give that pawn back for initiative. Remember, excuse me, black gives the pawn back for initiative and development. Remember, black has this extra pawn here. So knight bd2, d6. White wants to castle queenside, and bam, then you just go into the end game. Bishop takes e2, knight h5, bishop g5. This nice active play from Magnus. He does not let white gain initiative. You know, white is trying to make something happen, but Magnus plays really accurate. Here, rook b8, getting on the open file, of king f7 is preferable, getting out of the pin. And Magnus probably should have won this game. He has a, he's up, a pawn here, and has the two bishops. But having this king in the middle and stuff, he only wind up being able to get a draw in this position. There's no doubt in my mind that if he got in this position now, that he would just win. But again, just going back, these guys wind up having a draw. And again, knight g4, like I said, I know a lot of you play d5 automatically because that's one of the main remedies in these systems where the bishop's on c4 and plays an early e5. You're always taught to play d5. But knight g4 is perfectly acceptable and just kind of calms this line down. And it makes it where it's not even worth, trying to do anything as white. All right. So let's fast forward. 2007, same year. This time a stronger player with the white pieces, Arkady Knightage, 26-39, and this is at the World Cup in November of 2007. Now we see Carlsen switching his approach to the Scotch. Remember before our first game that he lost against Pavisovic, he played this traditional knight f6. Now he switches to bishop c5, which is what Vladimir Kramnik used for about 10 years from 2001 to 2011. So that's 9 years. So bishop e3, queen f6, of course. Knight takes knight takes c6. Queen f6 is well known. Threatening mate. And this is also a line that's played a lot also. Knight g7. Knight e5. There's a double attack on the g2 pawn and e4 pawn. d6. Basically, you don't want to take this pawn right here. Pawn grabbing with the queen in the opening, but being underdeveloped. And this is a specific reason right here in this position. Is this knight is going to capture right here. You have to do something about this bishop. So after bishop takes e3, you get knight to c7 check. And giving up the exchange here. Giving up the rook, excuse me. Okay, and just on principle, in a position like this, you don't want to, you're not finished developed, and you're just grabbing the pawn in the center of the board. Just helping white out. So d6 is played. King h1. Okay, this avoids, ideas like this. Eventually, if white plays f4, it clears the king off the diagonal. It's a good, good useful move. King h1 castles. Knight d2, protecting the pawn. Now d5. Bishop h5, queen d6, and f4. And this is an important theme for white because white wants to use his pawns to drive away those active black pieces in the center. If he can do this, he stands better. But theory shows that he really can't do it effectively, and that's why black equalizes. So bishop takes, c takes d4. Now he could have taken with the bishop, but he wants to keep the center compact. And of course, if he could play e5 and f5, he's golden here. But knight 5 to c6, and now he plays the move f5. Some of you are wondering, well, why not e5? Well, the problem with e5 is that it looks good, right? It's a one move threat, but then what happens is white's pawns become immobile. Notice that it's hard to play f5 because you have the knight here, bishop here guarding this square. So of course the queen is attacked. So where does the queen go? The queen can go two places. One is b4, right, attacking the d4 square and b2, or queen h6. Why is queen h6 good? Well, it gives another reason to stop f5. Not only are two pieces guarding f5 and the knight on e7 and the bishop on c8, but the queen on h6 now will just capture the bishop on e3. So say rook e1 to protect the bishop and threaten this. Well, black gets moves too, and he just hops in to f5. All right, and of course if g4, and then you would just take. So this is why e5, although white would love to be able to play that move, he just does not have enough time to do it. It's just not possible tactically. So he plays f5. This prevents, any activity or coming to queen h6, because now the bishop is already eyeing that square. Now he wants to play e5 on the next move. But guess what? And then you might say, well, why not just take here? The problem with taking here is the queen's position is bad, because now knight takes e4 with tempo against the queen. All right, and then let's say queen b4, then f6. Things get things that get real hot for black. You got to be careful. So instead of that move, you just play f6, holding back the pawns. Okay, and once the pawns become immobile, then they become liabilities for the side that has the pawns. Right, pawns are valuable as long as they're valuable as much as long as they're flexible and mobile. Once they lose their mobility, they become liabilities. Remember that. So when you have a big pawn center, and if you look at a lot of games where you see like one side has a big pawn center, like for instance, study positions like in the Pirc defense and modern defense and things like that, where white often sets up like tries to set up like an Austrian attack or Yugoslav attack and things like that. And look at the games where black wins those games. You will see that in many of those games, barring like just tactical blunders, dropping a piece and such, study what happens in the center in those positions. You will notice a lot of times the center will become either gets destroyed, right, or before the destruction of the center, it becomes immobile, where the person that had the big center pushed the pawns, and then black froze the pawns, or for some tactical reasons the pawns could not advance, and then black just chipped away at those pawns to where they became weaknesses, and then they just dropped off the board. You'll see a lot of games like that. Here Magnus freezes the pawns. The pawns cannot advance adequately. Give you an example right here. If white played e5, then simply just f takes e5. D takes, knight takes. So queen g4. So now you're just relying on tactics here. Knightage, king h8, rook f3, and now d takes e4. Knight takes and queen d5. Notice, even though the attack was there from the knight, this time with f6 played, excuse me, with f6 played, black doesn't have to worry about white playing the move f6. So that's the difference here. Furthermore, there's a triple attack on this pawn. Okay, so notice how he destroyed the white center. He took the pawn. And then bishop g6, and of course these guys agreed to a draw. The next move is just going to simply be bishop takes f5. Followed bishop takes f5, and then knight e7. Okay, so that was a good show by Magnus, and this was his first time employing this variation. And again, this was a variation used by Vladimir Kramnik for 10 years. And then, interestingly enough, Kramnik switched to the variation that Magnus started out using. Next game was a blindfold game. Again, I'm not going to show you the whole game. This is 83 moves. The play with the white pieces was Alexander Morozevich, 27.65, and Carlsen with the black pieces at 27.33 at the time. This is from the Amber blindfold. Again, we see the same variation employed. These players are playing blindfolded. And we just see this quick equality from black here. And here Magnus drops a pawn. But again, these guys are blindfold, so it's understandable. Right here, he could have just simply played knight takes d3, queen d3, followed by d6. Everything would have been good. Here he played after f4. And the idea is, of course, Morozevich can't take because of the vulnerability of the knight on e3. So Carlsen said, I might as well attack the center here, but after e takes d5, bishop h3, and rook e1, knight d3, queen d3, well, white is just up a pawn here. But again, these guys were playing blindfold, and needless to say, Magnus did go on to draw in this game. But again, we see the variation again. Our next game was Alexei Shirov with the white pieces. Carlsen is now 28-14, and this is at the Tata Steel tournament in 2011. And now we see Magnus, Magnus using this variation, main line variation here. Okay, now queen e7 is played here. Excuse me. And of course the queen is threatening to take here, so if c takes d5, then queen will take here. Shirov removes the knight from danger. f5, of course, not en passant there. So f5. Knight b4 from Carlsen, threatening knight takes c2. Queen d2. And of course, white would love to go into the endgame right here, as he is severely behind in development and does not want to be checkmated. Carlsen turns this down and simply attacks the e-pawn. And this is the old story with the Scotch, is, development and activity versus pawn structure. f4, right? I mean, look at white's position. Only the queen on d2 is developed, but he has a beautiful pawn structure, right? Beautiful pawn chains. Black has used his activity to compensate for this. So f4, d6, b4 from Shirov, queen b6, c5, queen b7. You might be saying, hey, why not just take and, have the rook have a discovered attack and an open file against the queen. And the reason why is because white also can play b takes c5 and have attack against the queen also. And then say after queen b7 and queen c3, things get a little murky here. For instance, after rook d5, let us say queen b3, bishop takes, queen takes, king takes, rook takes, and rook d1, and we're headed into this ending. And so it's a sharp ending. Here we see white has this ace in the hole here, but black has this 3-1 on the queen side, but the quality of pawns is kind of low. So it's not that cut and dry to play d takes c5 here. So queen b7 by Magnus, bishop takes a6, queen takes a6, Shirov captured, capture, e takes, rook he8. All right, king moves, connecting the rooks. Rook takes d6, and this is I like to finish here. Rook takes d6, queen takes d6 by Shirov, and actually it's Magnus that initiated this, this draw. Rook takes d6, queen takes d6, and you have a forced perpetual. So don't think Magnus blundered here, but just look at the exposed nature of the white king. Here is Alexander Morozevich again. This is a blitz game in 2012. And we see Magnus is back to the old line here. Again, it's quick d5 and quick destruction of the center. And now this position is flat, dead, equal. In symmetrical positions, really the only way to get in, to really one side can have an advantage is somebody has to get the initiative, So somebody has to make some kind of tactical error where, they get the initiative. So here we see Morozevich trying to do just that. Threatening h7, f5. Castle's opposite. And you see him trying to make some waves. Here, his pieces are all in nice attacking positions. Good move by Magnus. Great move by Morozevich, just taking the heat off of this pawn right here. Morozevich goes into an endgame. And black should be able to draw here, but, Morozevich is a great player, and this is a blitz game, so mistakes happen. And although it's equal, Magnus Carlsen wind up losing this game. He probably lost on time. This position right here is okay. So he might have lost on time. But again, we see this Magnus return to this line right here. This game is from the Tao Memorial 2012. White player is Timur Rajabov, 2784. Magnus was 2835 at the time. Again, back to the old line. Queen f6, threatening checkmate. B takes. A couple of games Kramnik played queen takes f3 here, just going into the endgame immediately. B takes c6, however. Queen g3. There's no need to take here and help your opponent develop with the tempo, right? Say after f3, d5. A lot of like weaker players do stuff like that because they figure that the advantage is so small that they'll be able to deal with it anyway. This might be true in this particular position. However, it's a bad habit to play like that, right? You don't want to get in the habit of playing like incorrectly. So even though it seems, like it doesn't really matter, I'll just play, just get the queens off the board. You don't want to help your opponent develop, especially with tempo like that, because that's a bad habit to get into. Here, Radjabov plays queen g3. He makes an attacking move. He moves the queen, but he's attacking this pawn. d6, knight c3, queen g6, offering the trade of queens again. Bishop d3, knight f6, knight a4, trying to gain a bishop here because, of course, this would be a terrible pawn structure to have. Bishop goes up, c3, bishop b6. Now for white to gain the bishop here, he has to straighten out black's pawns. Castle. And now queen takes g3, h takes g3, and black is equalized. Knight g4. A little pressure here. Bishop f4, f6. Right. Let's keep this guy from mobilizing and attacking the d6 pawn. Rook a d1, h5, bishop e2, bishop e6, and notice the knight working with this bishop here, keeping this pawn just bound up, and keeping this pawn frozen on the f2 square keeps this pawn weak, right? This pawn has no support. And then if the king were to move over, then the knight can just take. So it's very annoying, right? So he moves the bishop back here, perhaps the capture. It's just an annoying situation. Now bishop e6 comes out, threatening here, and he provokes the capture. Knight takes b6, and then a takes b6. Notice the rook is developed. He could have took the other way, right? But then he would just be dropping this pawn. If he takes like this, he'd be dropping the d6 pawn. So you always got to be on point. But it makes sense to capture like this because this is one less move you got to make. He's provoked Radjabov into developing his pieces for him. So now a3. So this lets you know this continuation right here, and this is not knocking Radjabov anybody. It's just talking about chess. But he's 27-84, right? And he plays knight takes b6. That's like a really bad move strategically, because just think, like if I'm I try to put it in the flip the board just for 1 second. I don't want to take too long because we're not really talking about all this strategy and stuff. But if I have the white pieces here, and I'm thinking about a move. Okay, I see that this pawn is threatened. Okay, by my opponent. First of all, I'm thinking, tactically, can he take it? Blah blah blah. Okay, it looks like he can. All right. So I'm thinking, do I want to make the move a3? Well, probably not, because he'll put the bishop there. All right. So I'm thinking of two moves here. I'm thinking of b3 and c4, which both deal with the threat. There's no way that I'm making a move like knight takes b6 here, because when I think about what does that do, how does that move help me? Okay, I get the bishop pair. Okay, fine, but I develop a piece that's totally out of the game. This rook is totally out of the game. I bring the rook fully into the game on an open file with Tempe. Let's flip the board back. There's no, so what compensate? I need a piece. I need a piece or some pawns or something to do something like that. let's see what compensation Rajabov gets. So he does all of this and plays A3, King E7, F3, Knight E5. So no compensation, just B5, Bishop takes E5, F takes, King E3, H4, G takes H4, Rook takes H4, Rook H1, contesting the file, taking it over, Rook C1, and now we just see the attack on these different, the weaknesses in the white position. Okay. So again, if you're playing the white pieces here, you're disappointed. If you're black, you're happy. Bishop goes in on that weak complex that was created when Rajabov went in for that combination, and we see Magnus slowly just pushing, right? Remember what I always say about fixing the pawns. You see how these pawns are kind of like stuck? That makes them targets, because now they're liabilities because they can't, pawns are meant to expand and move up the board and take control of things in squares. And I'll just go through this real quick, because it looks like, well, how is white going to make progress? Or black going to make progress, right? Now look what white is left with. The B pawn now is weak. And notice how black's pawns are still mobile. It's moving up the board. Now white is totally busted. He has to keep eyeing his passed pawn now. And there Rajabov resigned. So again, here is this system again by Magnus. Let's keep going. I didn't mean to get bogged down in that. Okay, it's 2014. It's a rapid game. Yu Yang Yi. Yang Yi is with the white pieces. Magnus with the black pieces. Here is a move order. Basically going, with the idea of, the same thing, playing bishop c5 here. Okay, so Yang Yi plays knight b3 and queen g6. Just attacking the pawn right here on e4. Makes it a little difficult to develop. Bishop can't come out. F3. F3 is a kind of like, a little bit of passive move to making an opening. Bishop d6. And this shows you the black equalizes right away. White did not find a correct response to this early queen f6 here. Okay. Maybe knight f3 or knight b5. Because after this f3 right here, and bishop d6, black is already threatening to play bishop takes h2. Right, for instance, I don't know, bishop e3, bishop takes h2. Right, and say he does that, queen g3. So already generating these kind of threats in the position. Knight c3. And Magnus plays knight g e7. Now here he could have played bishop takes h2. Then if rook takes, check. I'm sorry, not king e2. I mean king d2, king e2. And the idea here is if queen takes h2 now, then knight d5 with this idea. Basically trying to exploit the fact that black has not been developing. Right, king f8 and bishop f4, queen h4. So basically there's a price to pay for grabbing that rook in that position. Okay, so in this particular position is why he didn't play the move bishop takes h2. The rook sacrifice built in there. Instead, he sticks to the principles and just keeps developing. And now he takes now he takes the pawn, queen d2, bishop g3, and he has no worries. Okay, I'm not gonna go through the whole game, but Magnus went on to win that game, and you can see the deterioration of the white center, and Magnus just simply equalized. So again, remember that idea. Okay, let's move on. And of course, Nipam Niachi with the white pieces. And this is a blitz game. It took place in 2014. Again, we see Carlsen relying on this system. He's found a home here. His aggressive approach by white with this early f4 move. The d takes, knight c3, queen h4. This provokes weakness in the white king side. g3, and you can already see he'll have some trouble castling over there if he wants to do that. So this is provoked, and queen just simply comes back. And now white is settled on castling queen side. But white's setup gives black too many tempi. And after bishop d2, tactics start coming out. Knight d5, exploiting the pin. But the completely natural move is, and I'll just leave this game right here at rook h e8, and black has a advantage in this position. Fully developed, difficult for white to castle. Let's say he tried to do a move like that, bishop d2, bishop e2, then just simply bishop takes e2, and let's say queen takes e2, then knight takes e4, and that quick it would be over just like that. Magnus here did knight d5, and Nipam Niachi played h3. Again, after rook h8, putting more pressure on the e-pawn, after a move like h3, then knight takes e4 is playable, exploiting the pin. And then you can just simply drop back like that. Castle, bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes, rook takes, and then say after rook he1, then rook de8, and black is just up material. Black is just winning. It's the pawn up. Okay, and actually that game wound up being drawn. So this early f4 in the system, nothing really to worry about, as the development of black just was totally unscathed here. And white was lucky to hang on for a draw in that position. Let me save that. Okay, next is Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. This is from the second edition of the Sinkfield Cup 2014. And we can see, again, Magnus is relying on this. So we could say this is Magnus's number one response when it comes to dealing with the Scotch. Bishop b6. And we haven't seen this response from white yet, right? Even in the variations I went over with Kramnik, none of his opponents had played this move. They all played either like bishop e3, or they went for knight takes c6. So here's another one, another variation, knight b3. That's keeping the pieces on the board. and it's a little more positional. Bishop b6, knight c3, knight f6, queen e2, a5. Of course, with the idea playing a4, e5, castle. This is all well known. E takes, can't be that good, right? Look where the queen is, look where the king is. This is all well known, and begins with the move a4. Rook e8 at this time would be premature because of bishop e3. A4 first, knight d5. Note that this knight really doesn't have a spot to go. So if white tries to get greedy and preserve, say, just keep the extra piece after knight d2, rook e8, and notice how this knight blocks the bishop. Right there, the pieces start getting in the way of each other. And say after knight d4, d5. Okay, so black definitely gets the piece back. You can throw that in there. F takes d7, d takes e4. Let's say bishop e3, and then I like this move right here, threatening to double up these pawns, and you can't castle either on this side. And then if a move like rook d1, then you just pile up the pressure by making a defensive move, queen f6, but at the same time an attacking move, right, threatening to get more material. Note, this is impossible, not just because of the rook, but the pin. Another idea that's possible is a move like bishop d2, but what is bishop d2? It takes influence off d4, pursuing the initiative. Knight d4, hitting the queen, right? Queen has to go back because knight takes c2 is threatened. So there's no time to castle, right? Then of course you can do a move like a3. So that just gives you some ideas in the position. So don't think the piece is lost. So a4, and this is why knight d4 is settled on, as the correct move. Now here a takes b3 can be played, but the theory shows rook e8 here. Bishop e3, and now a takes b3. Queen goes there, threatening mate, but it's not a big deal after g6. Bishop c4. Knight b4 for Magnus. And d5. Again, playing dynamically. White has to castle here. Bishop takes c2 by Magnus. Rook e6. I know a lot of you are tempted to want to play a move like bishop takes e3, but you have to be careful with the timing of these things because you do open up lines for your opponent. Here Magnus did it. And you can see the position got wild here. The pawn on f6 is not a joke. Magnus gets rid of it. And here he's able to draw. Right, this is only good enough to get a perpetual. Alright, so we see Magnus playing the strongest competition in the world with this line of the Scotch. And if it has his stamp of approval, it should have your stamp of approval. So if you have trouble playing against the Scotch and you're an E5 player in response to E4, you should check out Magnus Carlsen's repertoire against the Scotch. Again, World Rapid, his Nepomniachtchi. Again, that guy shows up everywhere. And in this line, we see Queen F3, D takes E6, Knight C3, Bishop E6, A3. This prevents Bishop B4 from taking place later, and also it prepares queenside castling at some point. Magnus castles queenside. Bishop e3. Bishop takes e3. Queen takes e3. King b8. All right, and the game, the game is equal. There's f4. Nippon Niachi likes playing that move. Queen gets out of dodge. Bishop d3. g5. Real provocative move, but he wants to attack the white center. Excuse me, the black center. Again, you have to calculate this kind of move beforehand, and here it's bad because of just bishop takes f5. Notice the vulnerability of the queen here. So g5, f takes g5, g takes, knight takes h6. Don't be afraid to sacrifice material for initiative. e5, knight takes, and black easily equalize the position. Note that combination right there. Rook takes h2, rook takes, and then knight takes d3 check, and picking up the rook. Takes d5, king c8, rook takes, and players agreed on the draw. And I think that was it. Yep, that was the last up to 2015. We see Magnus' repertoire against the Scotch mainly consists of this. We see a couple of those other mainline games, but this is what we see. So, like I said, it's definitely if you're having trouble with the Scotch, I definitely recommend, um, you know, uh, following what Magnus does. He's not gonna steer you wrong. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I appreciate comments, suggestions on other openings. Um, I'm always up for new ideas, and I hope you enjoy the video.